Good evening, you're watching London Live News at 6 with Helena Warrior. Coming up tonight, Jeremy Hunt becomes the new Chancellor as Kwasi Kwarteng is sacked by Prime Minister Liz Truss, becoming one of the shortest serving Chancellors in history. We'll have analysis from Politics Home reporter John Johnston later in the show as Truss announces a second U-turn from mini-budget policies. Two Just Stop Oil protesters have been arrested after throwing tomato soup at one of Vincent van Gogh's most famous paintings in the National Gallery in a protest against fossil fuels. Well, also coming up tonight, more headlines from London and across the UK, including tributes to Sir David Amos ahead of the first anniversary of his murder tomorrow after the MP was stabbed by an Islamist extremist last year. And the reinvention of one of London's truly iconic buildings is complete as it opens to the public for the first time. We'll take you round the new Battersea Power Station. First tonight, though, Kwasi Kwarteng is no longer Chancellor, and Jeremy Hunt, a fellow leadership contender back in September, has been appointed in the role. Kwarteng had an emergency meeting with Prime Minister Liz Truss at Downing Street today, having been called back to the capital from Washington, D.C. to discuss his departure following the infamous growth plan, which has thrown the UK economy into turmoil. Kwarteng's disastrous mini-budget planned huge tax cuts for corporations and initially a tax cut for the highest earners, which was reversed, all paid by borrowing a completely unfunded £45 billion. Well, the announcements crashed the pound, saw an unprecedented statement from the IMF to advise against the measures, invited mortgage lenders to pull deals due to fears of huge interest rate hikes, and forced intervention from the Bank of England, who bought up bonds to try and promote stability. And the deadline for that support ends today. Well, in a letter, Kwarteng said he acknowledged the economic environment has changed rapidly since he unveiled the plan and will continue to support Liz Truss from the backbenches, but added he still believed in tax cutting. Well, earlier today, Liz Truss addressed the nation in a shorter speech than expected, where she decided to reverse her plan to scrap the planned rise in corporation tax from 19% to 25%.
I met the former Chancellor earlier today. I was incredibly sorry to lose him. He is a great friend, and he shares my vision to set this country on the path to growth. Today, I have asked Jeremy Hunt to become the new Chancellor. He's one of the most experienced and widely respected government ministers and parliamentarians, and he shares my convictions and ambitions for our country. He will deliver the medium-term fiscal plan at the end of this month. But it is clear that parts of our mini-budget went further and faster than markets were expecting. So the way we are delivering our mission right now has to change. We need to act now to reassure the markets of our fiscal discipline. I have therefore decided to keep the increase in corporation tax that was planned by the previous government. This will raise £18 billion per year. It will act as a down payment on our full medium-term fiscal plan, which will be accompanied by a forecast from the independent OBR.
Well, Liz Truss took only a few questions from journalists after the conference, sidestepping many about her position as Prime Minister, emphasising that she took difficult decisions in the interests of economic stability, in a performance that many of her own MPs described as painful to watch and lacking any real reassurance. Well, today's actions have added to the crisis of Truss's premiership, given her first big move as PM has resulted in 2 U-turns, with many asking the question of how much longer she can last to try and save her own job. Well, it's our 4th Chancellor this year alone, and it means Kwarteng is the second shortest-serving UK Chancellor on record, runner-up to Ian MacLeod, who died of a heart attack 30 days after taking the job in 1970. We'll have plenty more on this and the story as it unfolded in Westminster across the week after the break with political commentator John Johnson. Now to some more London-specific headlines for you now. Tributes have been paid to the MP Sir David Amos ahead of the first anniversary of his murder tomorrow. Sir David, who was Conservative MP for Southend West, was fatally stabbed during a constituency surgery in Leigh-on-Sea on the 15th of October last year. Ali Harbi Ali, an Islamist extremist, was given a whole-life jail sentence in April for murdering Sir David by using a false address to deceive the MP's staff that he lived in the local area after making the journey from London. Well, Julie Cushion served as a constituency assistant in Sir David's office and recalled fond memories of him.
You always knew David had entered a room. He was that larger-than-life personality. He was very good at working a room. He would make sure he spoke to everybody. But I have to say his timekeeping was absolutely appalling. He had a reputation for being late for everything. But that's because he would cram in getting around so many events in a day or an evening. So the ultimate effect of that, he would always be late. I got to the stage of knocking off half an hour here and there of an event in the hope I'd get him there nearer to time, but it never worked, but he got that reputation. But he used to do the most craziest of things. When he was knighted, he borrowed a horse from the local riding stable, hired a knight outfit, and got up on a horse, dressed as a knight. And then just who else would do it? No, he was always pulling our legs, he was always pulling pranks, always jokes, always laughter, and that was the fun of working with him.
And a reinvented Battersea Power Station has welcomed the public for the first time. After a transformation from derelict building into a shopping and leisure complex, the developers say it has been a Herculean task. During a 10-year project, the 4 famous white chimneys that tower over the Thames have been dismantled and rebuilt, and the roof of the building has been replaced. The hub now contains shops, bars, restaurants, and leisure venues. 2 protesters from the group Just Stop Oil have been arrested after throwing tinned soup at one of Vincent van Gogh's most famous paintings in the National Gallery. Footage showed 2 people opening tins of Heinz tomato soup and throwing the contents on the sunflowers painting before gluing their hands to the wall. One of the activists then said, "Are you more concerned about the protection of a painting or the protection of our planet and people?" Well, the Metropolitan Police said 2 people had been arrested, and the gallery said the painting was covered by glass and therefore not damaged. It is the 14th day of continuous disruption by the environmental protest group, who are asking the government commit to halting new fossil fuel licensing and production. The Metropolitan Police say a £10,000 reward remains on offer for information to trace a man who is wanted in connection with the murder of Michael Fadiaby in Newham. Michael was stabbed to death in a violent attack in Henniker Road, Stratford, on the 6th of August last year. Well, detectives are reiterating their plea for information to trace Ryan Igbenovia, who is a suspect for Michael's murder. Igbenovia is 26 and has links to Stratford, South East London and Birmingham. Sadiq Khan's top transport aide has admitted that free travel for Londoners aged 60 and older that was axed during the pandemic may never be restored. A long-delayed review of whether to restore free travel before 9 a.m. for holders of the 60-plus Oyster or Freedom Pass is due by the end of the year. Seb Dance, the Deputy Mayor for Transport, said the £230 million funding gap in Transport for London's finances meant the restriction may have to be retained. While forcing 60-plus Londoners to pay to travel before 9 a.m. raises about £15 million a year in fares. And take a look at these pictures. The Flying Scotsman has returned to London's King's Cross ahead of the train's 2023 centenary. The 100-year anniversary of the newly restored locomotive was built in Doncaster in 1923 and is now owned by the National Railway Museum in York. The restored 97-ton steam train was unveiled at the capital's biggest station ahead of a series of events. And just before the break, let's bring you this. London's New Year fireworks display will be open to the public again for the first time in 2 years. The Mayor of London announced that more than 100,000 ticket holders will be able to attend the celebrations by the River Thames on New Year's Eve. It comes after displays in 2020 and 2021 were cancelled and modified due to the pandemic, including live music in Trafalgar Square and a light show along the Thames. Well, City Hall says it's working with the Met Police, TfL, local authorities and the emergency services to safely deliver the event. Right, it's time for a quick break now, but when we come back, John Johnston from Politics Home will be here for a look back at the week in Westminster as we take a look at what's been a very turbulent few weeks for Liz Truss's government.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Welcome back to London Live News. Now it's time to turn our attention to what's been going on in Parliament over the last 7 days for the week in Westminster. Earlier, I spoke to John Johnson from Politics Home as he talked us through what's been a turbulent few weeks for Liz Truss and her government.
Liz Truss used this press conference this afternoon to U-turn again on a major part of her economic plans. She said that the planned halt of corporation tax at 19% was being scrapped and that it would go up to 25% as the previous government had suggested. She also paid tribute to Kwasi Kwarteng, who she sacked as Chancellor earlier this morning. But I think, the most extraordinary thing is that she just took absolutely no responsibility for what was going on. She didn't explain why she had sacked Kwasi Kwarteng or what he had done to deserve that, given that he was just putting forward the policies that she had run on in her leadership contest. It was only about 8 minutes long. She took 4 very brief questions from the media. She gave very kind of scripted, quite robotic answers, and then darted out the room. And the response from Tory MPs, including some that I've spoken to this afternoon, is not good. They just don't feel that she came even close to delivering the performance needed to try and shore up her leadership.
She spoke about Kwasi Kwarteng's replacement. Why Jeremy Hunt? He was a backer of Truss's rival, Rishi Sunak, in the Tory leadership race. A lot of people asking why he's been appointed.
I think it's an effort to try now to reach out across the party, which is very deeply fractured. There wasn't many of Rishi Sunak's backers given prominent roles in the government. And I think Jeremy Hunt is seen by many as being a bit more moderate, a little bit of a better performer in the media than Liz Truss, and somebody who can maybe try and bring some unity back. But some MPs, again, I've spoken to think, while they like Jeremy Hunt, that it's too little too late. And, one of the big planks of his leadership bid, obviously didn't go as far as Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak, but was to have a major cut in corporation tax. And now he's going to be the Chancellor who has to do the complete opposite and put it up again. So, I think this was a bit of an attempt to try and bring the party back together, but I'm not convinced that it's going to, go quite as far as she needs it to.
And let's just talk quickly about that U-turn on scrapping the planned rise in corporation tax. What has the market reaction been to that? Has it been significant?
So far, looking at the way the markets have responded, it's not what Liz Truss would have wanted. The markets did improve slightly earlier today, and then they seem to have started to go in the wrong direction for Liz Truss since she spoke. I think this is one of the big problems she faces, having kind of triggered this turmoil in the markets. It's very difficult for her to bring it back under control. In sacking your Chancellor and U-turning on your policies, doesn't sort of speak to economic credibility, and that's what the markets are calling out for just now. It's one of the kind of staggering things of today is that there really has been absolutely no contrition for what's been going on. And instead kind of doubling down on this idea that all of the kind of recent chaos in the markets has been entirely because of global, circumstances. And while, yes, there has been, there's pressure on global markets, but there has also been a very specific UK element. And we've seen that in the kind of immediate response following the mini budget. So, again, another thing that both Labour and Tory MPs wanted to see, and she didn't come out with it.
And John, mentioning Labour there, what has Labour's reaction been to this and other opposition parties?
The Liberal Democrats have come out and said there should be a general election, which is not a massive surprise. Labour taking a slightly different line at the moment. Oftentimes when the kind of government is in chaos and the other party are fighting and squabbling with each other, it sometimes makes sense just to sit back quietly and not say an awful lot. The Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer have both been out sort of criticising the mess that they claim the Tory party have created, but not quite sort of getting to that point where they're demanding she resign or demanding a general election, because often those things are quite kind of difficult lines to hold.
Finally, let's look ahead. Many challenges for Liz Truss ahead, some even saying that Truss may not even be Prime Minister for that much longer.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a kind of big expectation from her at that press conference, and Tory MPs at the moment seem to be very, very disappointed. There's a lot of questions over how they would get rid of her. The way the party's rules are set up is that there probably couldn't be a vote of no confidence like we saw in Boris Johnson, but it may get to the point where Tory MPs just approach her privately and say, I'm sorry, this can't go on any longer and you need to go. And at that point, we would have to see what happened, whether an interim Prime Minister would step in, whether she would remain in place until a new leader is chosen. And then I would imagine very quickly after that, probably a general election. A couple of days ago, I don't think people really thought that was a realistic prospect and thought that she probably would try and carry on for the next 2 years. But the last 24 hours, I think, have changed the dial on that quite significantly, which is extraordinary given how short a period of time she's been in office.
There we go. That was John Johnston from Politics Home. Now, the London Ambulance Service has joined the Circuit, a UK-wide database that provides ambulances with the most reliable and up-to-date information about the nearest defibrillators to a cardiac arrest. The London service joining the Circuit makes the database truly nationwide for the first time, with all 14 of the UK's services now connected. Now, one person who knows firsthand how important access to defibrillators is Ripon Danis, who suffered a heart attack outside a tube station in 2018. I spoke with him a little earlier.
I'm 41 years old. Back in 2018, at the age of 37, I came out of Highbury Islington tube station and had a cardiac arrest. And then, luckily for me, two passers-by, we think one was an off-duty police officer and one was a GP, saw me, started administering CPR, realised my heart had stopped, and then one person grabbed a defibrillator from Highbury Islington station and, yeah, essentially brought me back to life.
I mean, a really quite shocking story, and I think what was quite shocking about it is that I read that you just left the gym and you just left an exercise class. So, we assumed then that you were relatively fit. This just goes to show that this can happen really out of the blue to people, can't it?
Yeah, it can happen out of the blue to people. I mean, just to give you an idea, when I was discharged from the hospital, the cardiologist gave me, just asked me, what's your diet? I explained my diet because I was training quite extensively because I was doing a lot of Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I had a kind of, fighter's diet, eating a lot of, porridge, hardly any meats. I was probably the peak of my fitness. And it just happened to me. So I was finding it really difficult to believe that this is what has happened to me because there was no genetic history, there was nothing hereditary. The cardiologist kept on saying, it's just one of those things. And like I said, when he was asking me about my diet and I explained it to him, he took the booklet of what to eat now and he just went, you don't need this. So it just goes to show it can happen to absolutely anyone.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned you were outside Highbury Islington tube station and a passerby got the defibrillator from that station. Could you just explain what it is and how it's used? Because maybe some viewers might not know.
Yeah, basically, difference between a heart attack and a cardiac arrest. So a heart attack is, you can have a heart attack and potentially just function. You can function. I've heard of people have heart attacks, don't feel very well, drive to the hospital, and then they go, you've had a heart attack, let's just see to you. If you have a cardiac arrest, your heart has stopped. From that point, technically, you have died. You've died, all your organs, your brain, everything is shut down. And then it's a matter of, the seconds, the minutes it takes for someone to get, CPR administered on you and then get a defibrillator, used on you. The defibrillator basically shocks your heart to start pumping again. Yeah, I mean, they're really easy to use. With a lot of defibrillators, they'll actually have, actually all defibrillators, they'll have a voice that will tell you what to do. So it's just a matter of, as soon as you can locate the defibrillator, from that point onwards, the defibrillator will tell you what to do. So it's vital. Yeah, every minute that you don't get CPR or a defibrillator, that's like 10% of your life chances down from that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about the circuit then, this database, and why it's so important, because currently fewer than 1 in 10 people survive an out-of-hospital cardiac arrest, which is quite a shocking figure. Can you just tell us about the circuit then and why it's so important?
It's massively important. Like, look, I wouldn't be alive without a defibrillator. That's just a fact. If you imagine, there's something like 100,000 defibrillators out there in the UK, which is amazing, which is great. What's not so great is that they're not all registered. So if you were to witness someone have a cardiac arrest, or someone's collapsed and they have no heartbeat, and you wanted to find out where the defibrillator is, well, yes, there's 100,000 defibrillators out there, but if you were to Google where your nearest one is, there could be one literally behind you, but you wouldn't know because they're not registered. So what the circuit does is it's calling on all the people that have defibrillators, all businesses, all offices, and just getting them to register their defibrillator. So it's on a national database. So next, if you see someone have a cardiac arrest, you can just Google it or go on the circuit, find out where the nearest defibrillator is, and it will tell you. Currently, I think it's around, before the BHF set up the circuit, I think it was around 30,000 defibrillators were registered. Since they started up, now there's 50,000 registered, but there's still another 50,000 potentially not registered. So yeah, I plead to anybody who has a defibrillator, please get in contact, register your defibrillator. You will be saving lives. Not you might be, you will be saving lives.
There we go. That was Rip on Dennis, and you can get more information at thecircuit.uk. You're watching London Live News with Helena Wadia. A reminder of our top story coming up after the break. Plus, one Londoner has made it her mission to improve the work lives of people living with disabilities. We'll be hearing all about the Purple Light Up campaign and book.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Welcome back to London Live News. A reminder of our top story. Kwasi Kwarteng has been sacked as Chancellor, and Jeremy Hunt, a fellow leadership contender back in September, has been appointed in the role. Well, Kwarteng had an emergency meeting with Prime Minister Liz Truss at Downing Street, having been called back to the capital from Washington, D.C. to discuss his departure following the infamous growth plan, which has thrown the UK economy into turmoil. Kwarteng's disastrous mini-budget planned huge tax cuts for corporations and initially a tax cut for the highest earners, which was reversed, all paid by borrowing a completely unfunded £45 billion. Well, the announcements crashed the pound, saw an unprecedented statement from the IMF to advise against the measures, invited mortgage lenders to pull deals due to fears of huge interest rate hikes, and forced intervention from the Bank of England, who bought up bonds to try and promote stability. And the deadline for that support ends today. Well, in a letter, Kwarteng said he acknowledged the economic environment has changed rapidly since he unveiled the plan and will continue to support Liz Truss from the backbenches, but added he still believed in tax cutting. Well, earlier today, Liz Truss addressed the nation in a shorter speech than expected, where she decided to reverse her plan to scrap the planned rise in corporation tax from 19% to 25%.
But it is clear that parts of our mini-budget went further and faster than markets were expecting. So the way we are delivering our mission right now has to change. We need to act now to reassure the markets of our fiscal discipline. I have therefore decided to keep the increase in corporation tax that was planned by the previous government. This will raise £18 billion per year. It will act as a down payment on our full medium-term fiscal plan, which will be accompanied by a forecast from the independent OBR.
Well, Liz Truss took only a few questions from journalists after the conference, sidestepping many about her position as Prime Minister, emphasising that she took difficult decisions in the interests of economic stability, in a performance that many of her own MPs described as painful to watch and lacking any real reassurance. Well, today's actions have added to the crisis of Truss's premiership, given her first big move as PM has resulted in 2 U-turns, with many asking the question of how much longer she can last to try and save her own job. Well, it's our 4th Chancellor this year alone, and it means Kwarteng is the 2nd shortest-serving UK Chancellor on record, runner-up to Ian MacLeod, who died of a heart attack 30 days after taking the job in 1970. Well, we'll have plenty more on this and the story as it unfolded in Westminster across the week after the break with political commentator John Johnson. Now, after a shock arthritis diagnosis in her teens, Kate Nash has made it her mission to improve the professional lives of people living with disabilities. She set up Purple Space in 2015, a world-leading professional development hub for disability groups, and started the Purple Light Up campaign to celebrate the economic contributions of disabled people. Well, Kate spoke to Paul about her new book, Positively Purple.
I was diagnosed with juvenile chronic arthritis Still's disease at the age of 15. And, it came as quite a shock, as these things do. Went from being a very active young teenager running around the hockey pitch to a youngster who I wasn't able at that stage to walk very far or to do very much for myself, cut food or get dressed, etc. So it was a huge shock. I saw a really stark change in how people received me, and what I now call the soft bigotry of low expectation. It's often the case that people with disabilities, there are many different types of conditions and many different ages of onset and severity, but there is a beat in the story of our lives, and that is that often people will have less expectations of us. And how we will succeed in life. And that, of course, has dramatic or can have big consequences in terms of getting the first job or the next job.
So can you tell me a bit more about what Purple Space is all about? Tell us the origins behind the idea of you setting up this kind of campaign, this sort of organisation.
Purple Space is the world's only network of disability employee resource groups or networks. These are really in-house groups of individuals, often people with disabilities without allies, who come together and choose to share their know-how and their experience and their talent to support their organisations to improve policy and practice and procedure, all of that top of the shop stuff that we talk about. But equally, networks of support, they become beautiful vehicles to help people to build inner confidence. Purple Light Up is the movement that came from that. Purple Light Up is our mark of respect to International Day of Persons with Disabilities on the 3rd of December each year. And increasingly, purple has become synonymous with the experience of disability. And just like the rainbow flag has become so synonymous with the Pride movement, so too has the colour purple. And we have done much of that ourselves, is to enable, I suppose, colour to be an emblem of both the joy in our story as well as sometimes the struggle.
And your new book, Positively Purple, it's trying to get the attention of CEOs, business leaders. Would I be right to say that? And what are some of the key take-home messages from the book for these people?
Positively Purple, it has something for everyone. As you say, Paul, it is a read that I hope is going to be helpful to chief executives, both in the UK and those that are heading up global businesses. And the real purpose in that book, it is autobiographical, but what I've chosen to do is to pull out lessons learned for both employers from top down about the ways in which they can build disability employee resource groups, about how they can start storytelling campaigns as a way of normalising the experience of disability at work, about how they can put their attention on the workplace adjustment process, and how they need now to review some of the employee assist programs that exist. And then on the other side, I chose very deliberately to offer my own lessons learned as a person with a disability, and someone who has lived with that for 40 plus years. So it's things like investing in yourself, investing in your personal development, thinking about the things that we can do to build our inner confidence and our resilience.
There we go, Kate's book, Positively Purple, is out now. Time for a final break now, but when we come back, as we near Halloween, One South London Theatre stages one of Oscar Wilde's greatest ghost stories. We'll hear from the cast of the Canterville Ghost.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Welcome back to the final part of London Live News. As we near Halloween, the Southwark Playhouse is putting on one of Oscar Wilde's great tongue-in-cheek ghost stories, The Canterville Ghost. The comedy sees 4 performers show their acts in the style of a Victorian music hall show, weaved in between a story about an American family who moved to a castle haunted by the ghost of a dead English nobleman. Well, we heard from 2 of the cast.
It's like a framework for the telling of this classic ghost story is a Victorian music hall. We are performers in the music hall. I'm the chairman. My friend Callum here is an illusionist, and we have 2 other characters as part of our music hall Ents team, who are an illusionist, who are a psychic and a comedian stroke ventriloquist. And the 4 of us.
I mean, I think everybody loves a good old-fashioned ghost story, especially kind of as we get to October, November time, we get to Halloween, all that kind of autumnal theme. And a good old-fashioned Victorian ghost story is a lot of fun. So you have these 4 performers at the peak of their career, as Steve says, a psychic, an illusionist, a chairman, and a comedian, all using whatever skills they have in order to help tell the story in a fun kind of tongue-in-cheek way. There's a little bit of a nod and a wink to the audience, so everyone knows that we're telling this kind of old-fashioned story, but also people love the way in which we're, seeing the way in which we're going to use our skills to tell that story.
We should perhaps say that there's an even beyond what we've described so far as a sort of the layering or the play within a play, that we have our own story to tell as a group of performers. I don't want to give too much.
Don't want to give any spoilers away, Steve.
But there is a sort of overlying, almost like a spiritual nature to the whole piece. And my character, the chairman, in introducing or just presenting the whole show from the beginning, alludes to what life is, perhaps the greater, bigger picture of existence and life, and really the words are simply on the lines of life is short, and so don't worry about stuff. Just dive in and enjoy life, and that's what we're here to do for you tonight. Which points to what theatre is really anyway. It's an opportunity for audiences to just jump off the busy rat race of life and immerse themselves in something which is going to take them on an emotional journey, a roller coaster of some sort. I think our story, our piece of theatre, The Canterville Ghost, delivers on all of those, really. It's funny, it's touching, it's really quite deep and powerful, and I think it has a good, strong, overarching message. Would you not say so, Callum?
Absolutely, yeah. I think definitely inviting an audience to come and for a couple of hours just completely escape whatever it is they're dealing with in their life. Because life happens, right? And, you can't always control what's going to happen. But you can, in the words of Oscar Wilde, try and live wisely and be remembered well. And in the meantime, have a bloody good laugh.
Quite.
There we go. That show at the Southwark Playhouse runs until the 5th of November. Now, after a run of successful shows between 2015 and 2017, Hammersmith Lyric Theatre is hosting the return of a very current monologue drama that's loosely based on a Greek myth. Iphigenia in Splot tells the story of Effie, a young woman living in a deprived area of South Wales who has little to do but turn to drink, drugs and drama. Well, the star of this one-woman play, Sophie Melville, has been speaking to Paul.
That's my flat on the corner. My nan remembers when it used to be a shop, like almost every house on the block. Ooh, she says, it's not like how it was. I say, Nan, wake up, love. Everything changes.
The Greek story, Iphigenia or Iphigenia, or however you want to say it, she is a Greek goddess, and she was sacrificed by her father so he could go to war. So the main themes in that story are sacrifice, and that is what our version, Iphigenia in Splot, is based on. And it is basically about the sacrifices that people make every day in order to help others. And especially with the state of our society right now, the sacrifices that the people make, the people who don't have as much, the people who are forever making these sacrifices, and it seems to be only them, like the people who are voiceless, the people who are working class and underclass seem to always be taking it, always be taking the cuts, and just how unfair that is.
This is a reprisal of a role from a run that you did in 2015, am I right?
Yes.
What made you come back to this play?
It's where we're at right now as a country. So I did it in 2015, 2016 and 2017, and I thought that was it, and I didn't think I'd ever do it again. And I also never thought it would be more relevant than it was back then. But actually, it feels as if it was written today. It's so urgent and it's so pressing, and it's just devastating because it is reflecting what's happening right now in our country. So, and it feels quite dangerous, and it feels really urgent. So when I got the call back in May asking if I wanted to do it again, I was like, yeah, I think we have to.
Your character, Effie, can you describe her, and does her personality change throughout the story?
She's a nightmare. And she's an absolute joy to play, and she knows what the audience thinks of her. She's one of those girls that you'd avoid, you'd cross over the street if she was on the same side of the pavement as you, but she revels in that. Her personality doesn't change because it's always there. She just shows you what you think she's like to begin with. And actually, as the story goes on, you realise that these people are so complicated and so nuanced, as are all human beings, and that we shouldn't judge. And actually, we should go, well, why does she behave that way? Why is she drunk all the time? Why is she picking fights? It's because she doesn't have any opportunity. She can't go and get educated. She's got nothing to do because of all the cuts that are happening in this area in Cardiff called Splot, where she lives. So, of course, she's acting out. She's brilliant. I feel so strongly about her. I love her so much, and it is just an absolute gift of a part and an incredible play as well.
Nan loves to have a moan about the world, the way it's gone. Curse when she moans about how the world has gone. What she's really moaning about is me. My life. Nan says this place used to have everything you need. Shops are gone, bingo hall burned, pubs closed, doctors shut, Star Centre getting pulled down and more flats thrown up. She says we used to live. You could live here and live well. Now they're stacking us up and we're supposed to just exist.
I grew up in Swansea, so about an hour away from Cardiff, but Splot is kind of universal to all of those working class areas all around the world. And I grew up in a similar place in Swansea. So I know these girls, and I was very nearly one of these girls. And I love these people so very much. So I had a lot to draw on. But a lot of it is just confidence and swag, and just also playing with the audience. There's a lot of cat and mouse going on, and it's just gorgeous. It's an incredible play.
I know you've mentioned it briefly about the bigger themes at play, the austerity, cuts to services. It's a particular focus on cuts to the health service, am I right?
Not only the health service, but also just, the stuff that we do that makes us feel like we're living and not just existing. But there is a huge part of the story that is to do with hospitals and stuff like that, and how we're not looking after each other because we don't have the money. And it's not the NHS's fault. Like, the NHS is the most incredible service ever, and we should put all of our money into it because, how compassionate is that we can all just help each other. It's awesome. So a lot of it is about, what's happening with privatisation of the NHS and lack of funding and stuff like that, and how we're just letting people die, essentially.
There we go. That play is on at the Hammersmith's Lyric Theatre until Saturday, October 22nd. Right, there's just time for a final check on the weather before we leave you this evening. Tonight will be dry and not too cold as temperatures hit an overnight low of around 12 degrees. Tomorrow morning we'll see some sun behind these clouds, staying like that for most of Saturday with a chance of showers in the afternoon and highs of 17 degrees. Similar temperature on Sunday, staying cloudy to close out the weekend, and more of the same as we go into the start of next week. Well, that's all from the news team this evening. For more coverage, do follow our social channels at London Live, and we'll be back tomorrow morning with London's Weekend. See you soon.